All right, we're going to start up again with the keynote. Thank you all for spending the day with us or for coming in for this evening's program. For the keynote, we're going to learn about an innovative partnership between tribal leaders and scientists to create the nation's newest marine sanctuary here in California. According to NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, designated in 2024, the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary is America's 17th national marine sanctuary. And it's the 6th off the US West Coast, and it's one of the largest in the national marine sanctuary system. The sanctuary encompasses 4,500 square miles of Central California's beautiful coastal and ocean waters, providing protection to nationally significant natural, cultural, and historical resources, while bringing new opportunities for research, community engagement, and education activities. Indigenous peoples have lived on California's Central Coast for over 10,000 years. Submerged cultural resources, including possible ancient village locations once present along paleo shorelines, will now receive long-term protection through sanctuary regulations. The sanctuary honors the deep cultural and historical importance of this place to the region's indigenous peoples. Today, we're joined by two leaders of this historic project. We have with us Chairwoman Violet Sage Walker, the tribal chair of the Northern Chumash Tribal Council and the nominator of the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary. Throughout her many roles, is an ever-present connection to her family's long-standing legacy of protecting the natural resources, culture, and ancestors of this beautiful shared space. She continues to carry on the legacy left by her late father, Tribal Chief Fred Collins, a local leader and community member who began the Chumash Sanctuary nomination process. We also have with us Steve Palumbi, a professor of oceans and biology based at Stanford's Marine Lab. He has long been fascinated by how we adapt to a quickly changing world and what practical solutions can we preserve and protect for diverse sea life. And today, Steve will discuss his role in the science and stewardship of the Chumash Sanctuary and how his work supports the symbiotic processes that nourish such a sanctuary. So without further ado, welcome Chairwoman Violet Sage Walker and Steve Palumbi. I'd like to start with you, Chairwoman Walker. How did this marine sanctuary come about? And can you talk also about the importance of the sanctuary to the Chumash people?
Sure. Haku. Hello, everyone. Great to be here. I was actually going to be here at 2:30, but the traffic was bad. So I just got here 5 minutes ago. So I just wanted to say hi. I haven't seen anyone else today. Happy to be here. Berkeley hasn't changed since the last time I was here 30 years ago. So, except for the traffic.
It's been 30 years since you've been here.
Yes.
Amazing. Welcome back.
And 30 years ago, I was in my teens still. I was a fan of the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, and the Monterey Bay Aquarium was my favorite spot in the world. And so I always wanted to grow up and be the one that fed the little fish in the tank until I realized it was unpaid. So fast forward 20 years, our love for the ocean growing up on the Central Coast, and to define the Central Coast from Santa Barbara to Big Sur, that Central Coast, not the other one. Grew up there, was born in Avila Beach, and always lived by the ocean. The Marine Sanctuary nomination came out of an urgent matter with the relicensing of Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant. If you remember, about 10, 12 years ago, they were going to do seismic testing to relicense the power plant for another 20, 25-year license. And the seismic testing is also indicative of what they call blasting, seismic blasting, that deafens whales and animals and causes mass die-offs. And so during that time, my father, tribal members, groups like Sierra Club, Surf Rider, fishermen, and everybody got together for a common cause, which was to stop seismic testing. And that was a very contentious California Coastal Commission meeting. I believe it was down in Long Beach. And that is where the group formed that would eventually nominate, create, and write the documents for the proposed Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary. They elected my father because of his tenacity, determination, unstoppable attitude, but also because of his connection to culture. The nomination had been proposed before, and going back to, if you remember, about 50 years ago, the proposed Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary was actually supposed to go all the way to Channel Islands. It didn't have the political will at the time. It was always Leon Panetta's dream to see that connected, completely protected coast of California. And so he was one of our initial and biggest supporters of renominating this area. And that's how it came to be, was a group of people got together to oppose seismic blasting, oppose the relicensing of Diablo Canyon, and also the other things that go along with seismic blasting is the earthquake faults around Diablo Canyon and the nuclear power plant there. The spent fuel storage has always been a problem, and just the phasing out of nuclear power in general. So that's how we started. The long answer.
And can you share a little bit more about, I'd love to hear a bit more about some of the challenges in establishing the sanctuary and getting the government approval.
We don't have time for all that. There's nobody's gonna want to hear all that. It'll take 2 weeks.
Well, just the headlines then.
The headlines.
And you got it done just in time before the Trump administration.
Yeah, and I will say, I just want to be fair to everybody in this room. It's a bittersweet time. It's not what I thought it would be, and so if I don't seem as excited as I should be, it's we got the nomination done November 30th. Everything changed, and all of my friends got fired. All of my friends are gone. The people that helped us, I mean, not all, Steve, but the people in the administration that helped us for a decade are gone. A lot of our local electeds are still here, but our federal, representatives in the White House and in pretty much every agency that has been with us this whole time. So it's kind of a bittersweet ending to the story, or beginning. So I would say that the hardest and most difficult challenge is to keep up the stamina and determination to be able to have the fortitude to go through these ups and downs and emotional roller coasters over the past 10 years, because this has gone through 2 Trump administrations now. And I will say, I don't like to dwell on what was the most difficult, but we went from the original proposal almost 10 years ago during Obama, and we had 7,000 supporters. And during the Trump administration, we grew to 35,000. We grew to 65,000. At the end, we had over 100,000 comments in the Federal Register. Probably the most amazing marine sanctuary campaign, if I do say so myself. And just the fact that if we have 100,000 people making a Federal Register comment, that means we have 3 million people that are really supporters, because nobody likes to make Federal Register comments. So that being said, I would say keeping up the energy and the effort to see this through to the ending, and knowing that we were this close to not getting it, and that what would we do if we had to do it for another 4 years? Do I have the energy? Do we have the resources? Is there the willpower to do this if we hadn't slid through under the wire? So.
Oh, congratulations. I want to bring Steve into this in a minute. I just wanted to ask for clarification. What role does the Chumash tribe play in managing the sanctuary?
Well, that's yet to be determined. So the management plan and everything that has been proposed by the previous administration, I'll just give you an example. Our celebration, our opening celebration, they've been canceled. So we hope that the management plan will be followed by the new administration, by the new leadership, by the new hires, but their hands are tied. As you all know, a lot of their colleagues and people in NOAA have been let go. Things have changed. Things are uncertain, unstable. Budgets are uncertain, and you can't do anything without a budget. So I might still be fundraising for the sanctuary for the next 4 years. I don't know, honestly. So implementing co-management and implementing, to be honest, I mean, I would love to just say to you that, oh, we're going to co-manage this and it's all going to be roses and happy, you know, from here ever after. But co-management is not a priority of the federal government now. Tribal involvement is not a priority. And so the 10 years of my life that we talked about, you know, co-management and tribal co-management, all these things, honestly, it's uncertain. And I wish I had a different answer for you, but you know, I think we can all make it through this.
Well, I'm so glad you're able to share this with us in the room, and we have a number of journalists here. I think it's an important story for more public awareness. Steve, how did you get involved in this marine sanctuary, and can you talk about what role you and other scientists play or you intend to play in the coming years? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. You know, it's an amazing honor and a privilege to work with Violet and her team on this for the last couple of years, and it's really been them who have led it and, you know, made it happen. Those 100,000 comments in the Federal Register, they just didn't happen by chance. I mean, there was a lot of work that went into that, and I'd heard about this effort when you reinvigorated the petition for the sanctuary, the beginning, kind of a year into the Biden administration, right? I thought that was just great. I'm a marine biologist in Monterey. We work up and down the coast. We use genetic testing to do a lot of different kinds of things, and ocean, you know, testing marine products, testing seafood, and then we can also look at the kelp forest with environmental DNA. The DNA you can get out of water, you can get off the bottom, and look at the wide variety of different types of creatures. And so we were beginning to explore that. I heard about this. It's like, oh, this is perfect, because that coast on the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary is this incredible kelp forest from the very northern part all the way around into the very southern end. And that kelp forest has got hundreds of species. It has thousands of species, migratory species and birds and mammals and fish and invertebrates and algae. And they all come up in our record, the stuff that we can do, the testing we can do. So that was also flashed into my mind, like, here's a new proposal for an incredible sanctuary in a place where we didn't know that much. Maybe we could help by proposing to do some of these tests. So I wrote, you know, Violet an email, which was answered in 8 minutes or something really like that.
By my assistant.
Yeah. That's fine. All right. But it was a highly positive answer. So yeah, let's see what can happen. And it was all very uncertain what it was really going to be. But it was all positive, and it was all, yes, let's talk, let's meet. And that's where that began. we had the potential for doing a whole lot of really innovative biodiversity mapping and monitoring. We had the potential for working with a group that had a vision of how that would, how this area really mattered. And so we wanted to put that together if we could.
And can you give examples of specific research that you're planning? Sounds like this environmental DNA is going to be a big feature. I'd love to just hear a bit more about some of the scientific ambition.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're not just planning it. We've been doing it for 3 years. And so one of the things that we sort of cooked up here was that in order for the co-management by the tribe and the sanctuary to really take off in the right way, we could develop with the tribe the research program. We could develop the techniques and get data sets and get an idea of what was really going on. And then we could give that to the sanctuary as a way for them to get started, as opposed to the opposite, which is where the sanctuary comes up with the research program and tells everybody what they're going to do and gives that to the community. The community could give the research program and its direction to the sanctuary as it was born. And so that was a really cool reversal of the role of the community in things. So we were really excited about that. Environmental DNA is a question of going out and getting environmental samples all up and down the coast, from Cambria down along the coast to Lama, Gaviota along the southern edge there. We get those samples from water. We get those samples from cobbles that are brought up out of the kelp forest. Extract the DNA, sequence it, run through a whole lot of computer-based bioinformatics. And we have data from 2022, all up and down 2023, all up and down 2024, all up and down. And that's what we are hoping to use to basically spark the research into the future.
And how does the tribe and scientists work together on that work?
Well, it's important that that the tribe has interest in what the research that's being done. And so we've been able to work with Steve to actually direct what things that we're interested in knowing about. And that can be traditional food sources, that can be food sources that we once had that we no longer have. And that can be food sources that tell stories of our creation and our culture and of our jewelry and our dances and songs. And so we want to have input as to what research is being done so that it unfolds a bigger story of our life and existence on the coast, our history, heritage, things that were there that maybe aren't there now visibly, and like certain species of fish and steelhead and things like that, and grunions and things that we used to see in abundance that we now don't really see, but we still see evidence through eDNA. And it also tells a story of our villages, and we have agreed to rename using traditional names of villages and sampling sites and telling the story of the locations to give it context and to give it meaning to people. So we're actually setting an example of what the sanctuary could be capable of.
Can you talk, Steve, about how indigenous knowledge is complementing the scientific inquiry? Is there interesting intersection there?
Oh, there is. There's incredibly interesting intersections there. The process itself is one that's a process of conversation and a process of sort of exchange. I asked Violet early on in our we were talking about how this is going to work, and that was my kind of a question. How do we bridge these sets of knowledge? How do we work together? How do we get to know one another? And in Violet, very famously, she said, "Just show up." It's like, oh, that kind of works. And I I think I responded immediately that I'm from a big Italian family, and that usually means food. And she said, "Oh yeah, we've got food." It always means food too. So we have begun to try to get together. The actual, I think, part of working on the designation itself, it was so time consuming and it drained so much energy from everyone. We didn't do as much of that in this last year, I mean the year before this, but we started that back again. And it's about sharing little bits of stories back and forth, and seeing what people say about it, and then listening to that, and then going back and looking again, and trying to go into, for like a meeting we had in July, like here's the first, we were presenting the first set of data from 2022, and I'm thinking, how do I present the data of the geographic distribution of 1,000 species up and down this coast in any way that would make any sense to even anybody? So we figured out a way to do that, and we got a chance to talk about grunion, for example.
And we brought food, so everyone showed up and didn't know that they were being presented with scientific data. So you have to like sometimes trick people into coming. So
I have to do that for graduate students too.
yeah,
Right.
but that was truly, I think that's my advice to everybody, is just show up. We didn't know how to nominate a marine sanctuary. We didn't know how to advocate for all this, but we just kept doing it and showing up. And that's what I told Steve. He called me, he said, "Can we do this?" I'm like, "I don't know what you're doing, Steve, but if you just show up, then we will get to know you." And, I didn't know anything about eDNA before we met Steve. And then I found out that he was super cool because he spent most of his time in Palau, which is my favorite place. So it's just been building a relationship over years. And now the tribal members who may have been skeptical of, the research priorities and what we were doing, now they all want to participate.
And it's cool. Violet mentioned grunion, for example. Who knows what a grunion is? Oh, see, everybody. Well, no, not everybody. Grunion are small fish. They swarm in at high tides under certain seasons, dig down into the sand of the beaches, and then they spawn their eggs into the sand. Males and females get all nestled in together and do that thing, and then it's a great time to catch them. So they're a great food source. So one of the things we were talking about in there was that, okay, we have a strong environmental DNA signal of grunion just south of Humkok. Humkok, by the way, is the point of the west coast where it comes down and then starts dipping in towards Santa Barbara. The Portuguese renamed it something, I forget what, Point Conception. And so we're basically, it's Humkok, south of Humkok there is where we find the grunion signal. And so we had this really fascinating conversation with the people there about where they find grunion now. And it's south of Humkok. But where did you find it when your grandparents took you to find it? And it was north of Humkok. And it was wasn't it up to Avila Bay? Right?
All the way up to Morro Bay. And when we were kids, and I'm not that old. So in one generation, the grunion runs are gone north of Point Conception, Humkok.
Do you hope to reintroduce them there somehow?
Well, I think that that we need to first see why they're gone and see what has changed, and whether it be overfishing or pollution or just warming temperatures, that species are gonna be migrating because of the temperatures of the ocean, or I think that more work has to be done, but to tell the story of that they were here, that in the San Luis Obispo Creek that we had sturgeon and we had steelhead, and now you never see them. But you can still see the eDNA of the species there.
So there are these genetic traces of steelhead. That's amazing.
And so that's sort of an example of how the DNA finds grunion, even though you would never be able to find them in the water itself. They're just not that apparent except when they're swarming in those couple of nights. But the eDNA says they're there, and then that led to this conversation about now and then. That is kind of the way it goes.
Yeah, and the restoration, what species can be targeted for restoration work through this, and what species might be the most threatened and in need of, restoration and help. Because when I was growing up, we started the sea otter program. So in my generation, the Monterey Bay Aquarium has brought back all the sea otters. They all live in one spot in Morro Bay. They need to relocate a little bit and spread out, but there was no sea otters when I was a kid. So when we talk about Grunion, we have to think about all these species that used to be there that were food sources for our people and that were good for the environment and, good for the kelp forest. The sea otters ate all of the, spiny red urchins or purple urchins. And so you see all this. We have to pick and choose what we want to work on now.
You talked a little bit about widening the circle, more people getting involved in this, and I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for the public to get involved. It feels like a gift from the Chumash people to the wider public, and I'm sure many of us here are wondering, is there a way that we can get involved?
Yes, I hope so, because we're getting tired and we need more help and we need more people to participate and we need more people to tell the story and come visit. And the best way to get involved is to go and spend time in the marine sanctuaries, go and support the marine sanctuaries, support the work of the aquariums and these places like Mbari and the colleges that are doing this work. In whatever way seems best for you. But I will say that we all need to lean in a little bit right now and not lean back, because all the marine sanctuaries and all of the marine protected areas and all of this is threatened. So enjoy it, walk on the beach, and remember why you're doing this, but lean in a little bit and use all of the resources that you have to make sure that in 4 years, we still have the marine sanctuaries and we still have the new marine sanctuary.
If we can protect what we have, do you feel this is a model that could be replicated elsewhere? I understand that might be hard to do in this moment right now, but looking ahead, further afield, do you feel that this is a model that could be replicated and should be replicated?
Sure, that's an easy question. I said that this is the first tribally nominated National Marine Sanctuary ever, but it's also the first community nominated. The community paid for this. The community donors, philanthropy, like local donors up to national NGOs. No money was taken from the federal government ever for the marine sanctuary designation for 10 years. So this was a community grassroots-led effort because of that, I think that every community has the potential to protect the things that are most important to them, whether it be a marine sanctuary, marine protected areas, or a national park. And then I think that it's a natural segue, and I really loved how things were going, a few months ago with this, tribal co-management and land back and things like that, and indigenous traditional ecological knowledge being implemented into all levels of the government. I think that is a model. In other countries, I know that, Australia and the Great Barrier Reef and the Guardians in Canada and all these places that we've traveled, all the places that Steve has traveled, there's amazing examples of indigenous people protecting and actually making it into a blue economy for them and actually making a living off of, instead of extracting resources, protecting resources. And so it's definitely replicable, but it's every place in the world will have to have their own, tailored plans with their community and make sure that the community supports it. And I want to say that community support can be very volatile. There can be a lot of different competing interests. And if if you're a little island out in the South Pacific and you're up against, the biggest fisheries in the world, you're going to get maybe swallowed up by some of this. So it's really important that we join together with all of the sanctuaries and all of our sanctuaries around in other countries to support each other. And that is one of the things that came out of the Chumash Heritage Offshore Marine Sanctuary was during that period, we formed an ocean coalition. So we formed a sister sanctuary group with all of the sanctuaries around the Pacific. So that way we can all support and speak up for each other.
And one of the other thing I'd add to that is the community itself is a really important, is a crucially important part of this, as Violet said. And then our challenge and treat actually is to involve the community in the science side as well, and the research side. And that's gotten a lot easier with the advent of things like iNaturalist and all the online tools that people have to find species of birds, and plants, and whatever, and then register them, and then know they're contributing to a larger whole. And so we are trying to develop that, but also trying to develop a cadre of folks who want to come out and help sample that coastline for the techniques that we can do. And again, Violet was just like, just so instrumental in saying, well, how do you do this? And she said, make it fun. Like,
So do you take volunteers?
Make it fun, yeah.
Do you take volunteer scientists or members of the public to do some of the sampling?
Yeah, so that's where we're going. But if we have to take people out on a boat to do that, it's just not going to be scalable. So what we've done actually is to invent new ways of collecting these samples that are really simple and much more fun than you would otherwise. So, for example, what we've done, a lot of environmental DNA is a water sample, and like that's sort of boring, right? Just go in the water and do that. But you can also collect a water sample by taking a ball, a wiffle ball or a pickle ball, putting gauze in the middle of it, and then launching it off into the kelp forest with a fishing rod. And so those are very conveniently called fishing rod actualized marine and environmental retrievers, or frammers.
Yeah. And to see people try and do that was the fun part.
It was hysterical,
Yeah.
right?
It was not easy. No.
But how people really get into like fly fishing? It's kind of like that. It's like, okay, can you get this frammer into that kelp forest over there from shore? So it's something that people can do and feel fun about. We've also just started a process of trying to sample not from an expensive oceanographic research boat, but from a kayak, or eventually from traditional tumulls, the redwood plank watercraft. And that again was Violet's idea. And so we've been looking for okay, how do we sample water from a kayak? Well, that's kind of easy too, but how do you sample water from the bottom from a kayak without jumping over? And so simple things like that give people some fun to do, but to get a sample of stuff that they can send in. And it takes a while to get the data back. It's not like iNaturalist, but it connects people to that, and hopefully that set of community people will be the research staff for the sanctuary and will be out there being able to do that sampling.
Great. It sounds really fun. Well, I'd like to open this up now to you all. If anyone has questions, we have time to ask our panelists. Do we also have a microphone? Okay, great. So we have a microphone here. So if you raise your hand, we'll bring you the mic. Anyone with a question? Okay. Okay, here in the center.
So, sorry, I guess it's not really a question, but I just want to empathize. While I was at I think they call it Seymour Marine Lab. I think when I went to school at UC Santa Cruz, it was Long Marine Lab, and it's also now a sanctuary. And their NOAA people are all leaving, and I don't know. It might be one of the last public events. It was just about the animals they've seen out there and the whales and everything, but a lot of it was also how many people are leaving and how scared they are for the future of their little marine lab there and everything. So I just think it's all terrible. Sorry.
Well, I'll answer that question. We've been taking care of our coast for eons and eons. So whether or not NOAA existed, we will all be responsible for taking care of our coast. And so I think about that a lot. If they were to do away with NOAA or the Department of Education or any things that we think or we hear about, be assured that, it's our responsibility to take care of where we live. And so our people will not, stop what we're doing, not stop the environmental activism and the protection and the care and the stewardship of the ocean because of the ebbs and flows of the government. So it would be helpful if we could rest and have a marine sanctuary in place, but that has never happened in the history of our people. So we will always be vigilant. So back to whether or not NOAA is in full force or diminished during this administration, our people will still be vigilant for the coastline.
I have to say that's a huge benefit, a huge gift to all of us to have people with us still in our community whose roots go back so long and who have a deep-seated connection with this to help have that energy to say, yes, we can do this. We've been here. We'll do it.
Okay, good. I see a number of hands. I want to call on my colleague Dan.
Hi, yeah, thanks. It's really great to hear about the work and where things are at. I'm teaching marine biology here at Berkeley right now, and I've got, I think, some students in the room. And you had asked about citizens, and you've talked about community members, but for the students that are looking at a career in this space, I don't know if you can talk a little bit about, some positive notes about how they may be able to contribute and look towards the future. I
think you should probably stay in school for a few years. No, joking aside, this is a period of time when there's an incredible amount of technology available to do things in the ocean and understand that has never been available before. And it allows you to dig in and understand little parts of the sea that you wouldn't otherwise have. So those are all really going to be incredibly valuable skills, and they're going to work. And they may not work right this second, but they're going to be needed. And just like this sanctuary is going to be needed in 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years, so is the education that all of you are getting. And so, yeah, my kids graduated into a recession. Not good, but they're still basically doing what they're doing, and it's been a really good thing for them to have that education and just running through with it. And along the way, there's opportunities to get involved in things like this. We've got students from Cal Poly who are involved in our eDNA project, and even for the marine biology part. Tiny little things that marine biologists know are out there in the ocean, amphipods, little tiny isopods that, they're just fish food, really. But there's thousands of species like that. And just knowing about those brings life into the kelp forest. And one of the connections with the Chumash That was what made early on, is when we were sort of talking about this technique. And it wasn't, because I was saying, it doesn't just find the big fish, it doesn't just find the whales. I mean, it does find those, but it finds all these little things too that nobody really has seen or what. And the answer from the community was that all life is sacred, no matter how small. And so that it's there matters. And that's just such an uplifting thing. So being part of the group that knows what's there is so cool, I think. And I'd say go for it.
And I will add one thing to marine biology and marine sciences, is that green renewable energy is growing. And we do have to do something to address climate. Whatever you feel that you need to do to address climate change, they're going to need scientists. And so think maybe outside the box. Maybe you thought you might work, at, like I did, feeding the fish at Monterey Aquarium, but you might end up working for a company that does remediation work, and it may be a career path that you didn't even think of, when you started, but now there's all kinds of different things that are going to need marine biology, and that includes cleaning up our water and waterways and decommissioning, nuclear power plants and offshore oil rigs and working on offshore wind. So all those need biologists and scientists. So there are career paths that just may not be exactly what you thought when you started.
Are there any students who have questions? I would love to make space if there are any. Okay, in the back there.
Thank you. This is kind of more of a content question. You said that this was kind of a more novel thing to have the community develop the research plan and be the ones to present it. I kind of wanted to know what that process looked like. Like, how was that research plan developed by the community?
So it's ongoing, and it's first you start by developing some framework around it and making sure it works. It's really good if it works. So we've been doing that, and then it's been reaching out to the community and saying, well, we've got, for example, could be kayaks, it could be the tummels, it could be the frammers, it could be water samples, and what are people interested in doing? And then you take that interest and kind of build a map. I'll say, well, are people interested in that all up and down the coast? Are they interested in it in, just the summer? Are they interested in being there every month, all year? And so that's kind of how you build it, by first reaching out, seeing what people are interested in doing, and kind of seeing how you fit that into a team that does it. The other aspect is just practical, like how do you get a bunch of samples if we're doing the sampling thing with, water or whatever? How do you get a bunch of samples from that beach south of Guadalupe Dunes to my lab without it all degrading, because it's got to be DNA. So we've got those worked out, and so you provide those, and then hope you can keep the energy going with that. So that's how we're working on it. And our original goal was that we were going to be able to do this work, and the sanctuary would be designated, and then we would just do a handoff with the sanctuary staff. Like, here's what we're doing. You can pick that up and keep working with it. Now we got probably a little bit of a longer pitch to get that handoff. But we'll do it and work with the community there to see what it is they're really interested in discovering.
We had one question right here.
What are you doing to preserve and develop the Chumash culture, the rituals and songs and music and whole cultural paraphernalia that must be very rich thing?
Sure, that's an easy question. One of the controversial parts of the Marine Sanctuary nomination, back to the first question you asked me, what was hard about it was calling it Chumash. And there are other tribes of Native people that live along the coast, and there are other people in general that live here, and naming it after one specific group was a contentious point. And but my father passed away in the middle of the designation, and he told me on his dying deathbed, make sure this happens and make sure it's named Chumash Heritage. I'm like, great. So he said he wanted it to be named Chumash because he wanted people to say our name and have the same imagery that they do when you say Hawaiian. And so when you say Hawaiian, you think of the beautiful dresses, the beautiful shells, beautiful food, flowers, leis, songs, the beaches. He said that he wanted people to know our songs, our language, our words, our food, our jewelry, which I'm wearing. I'm wearing shells and acorns. And he wanted people to know the Chumash, like that you would know when you say Navajo. Everybody in this room, if you close your eyes and you say Navajo, then, or Dene, you would have this picture in your head. You think of the red mountains and, cactus and turquoise jewelry and fry bread, and, you all have this picture. And so he said that I just want people to know who we are and to know that we've been taking care of this place since the beginning. And that's why, even though the name was controversial, that's why I personally had to stick with it, because he asked me to. And whether we got the sanctuary or not with a different name, I did everything 110% of my power to make sure it had that name for him, because of the story he said. He said, I want people to know that we had abalone and that we did, shell beads, and that we had, salmon and lobster for dinner. He always said that people were very paternalistic towards early Native Americans and thought that we were suffering. And he's like, we were eating lobster and salmon on the beach. We're suffering now, paying rent and driving cars and, having to work 8 hours a day. But before, we ate lobsters and laid on the beach and, made jewelry. And so who suffers? And so he just wanted us to know the songs, the stories, the colors. This is our cave painting, the swordfish. And that is in Vandenberg Swordfish Cave. It's a 15,000-year-old site. So to answer your question, the name is what inspires people to be curious. Once you're curious, you ask questions, and then you learn.
What does the name Chumash mean in the language?
Everybody would tell you a different thing. But I asked one of our elders what it meant, and she said that when the Portola expedition came through, it was a slightly different sound than Chumash, but that's what we ended up with. They said that when the mist lifted off the coastline, they saw villages and people in the ocean in the mist. And I'm like, that sounds like the Stephen King movie. And she's like, yeah, the people of the mist is what she told me. But, there could be very different interpretation. You could ask 100 people and get 100 different answers. But we do live in a very foggy spot. So.
Wonderful. We have a question here in the middle.
Yeah, question for Steve. So does your concept or methodology for environmental DNA would include, say, looking at paleo middens or paleo-Indian middens on these marine terraces to see, look at paleo DNA material to see what the diversity of, food resources were that were, say for several thousand years old that are no longer there now?
Yeah, I can. And that kind of digging back into the past with DNA has its limits because the DNA degrades. But there are certain structures that hold on to their DNA pretty well. Unfortunately, mollusk shells don't have that much DNA in them, but other things do. And so that's a possibility. But this is one of the interesting, I mean, this is the thing. Those are not our middens. Those are not our places. If we're asked to do that and there's an interest in the community, we will certainly help do that. This is exactly the kind of question that should well up from the community who will want to know that, and we can help answer it.
Are these archaeological records? Is that for people who aren't familiar with the reference? Is that
So a midden is often yeah.
So I've been doing cultural resource work for 35 years for the tribe. And one of the things that I find fascinating is when we do have to do work in what we call a midden, which is basically, it can be anything from trash piles, ancient trash piles, where you had your dinner, where you threw your trash, it can be 30, 40 feet deep. It can be 30, miles out into the ocean. So there can be middens where the old village sites were that were, halfway out to the Channel Islands. So it's really interesting that we found a midden site on the Channel Islands, and I can't remember the exact site number, but it had like 40 different kinds of fish that were in the trash, basically a trash pile. 40 different kinds. I mean, we eat maybe, 4 things? Shrimp, halibut, 40 different kinds of fish. So if we can use eDNA and we can test, cultural sites that are buried under the water, under the ocean, we have really great resources and friends that do, like Justin that does, the archaeology and diving, and all these people that would love to help us and participate once we locate and identify underwater cultural resources. But the purview of the sanctuary and the original designation was to protect, identify, and research underwater cultural resources. To answer your question, it would be great to have the eDNA used for that.
okay? We have a question here on the right side.
Thank you for being here with us tonight. My name is Ryan. I'm actually an undergraduate geography student, and I'm also a Santa Barbara resident. You kind of talked a little bit about the wind and the platforms and things that are out there in kind of close proximity to the marine sanctuary. I was curious what the perspective was or the vision was for energy on the Central Coast, and how we can do that in a way where it's eco-friendly.
Well, that's a tough question because right now we're, as you know, living in Santa Barbara, trying to oppose the opening again of the Sable pipeline. So the oil spill that happened in Santa Barbara, I think it was back in 2017, is right in the marine sanctuary zone. And so there's a lot of things that are constant threats, whether it's opening offshore oil exploration again. I want to say, to be fair, not all tribes agree. Okay, so some tribes are in favor of opening up this offshore oil, some tribes are not. So I want to make sure that we don't generalize people in any, romanticize any tribal environmental beliefs. So some of the tribes in Santa Barbara want to see it open, some don't. We want to see the platforms come out. We want to see the end of offshore oil. With the Chumash Sanctuary, we prevented the Cademo offshore wind demonstration going into the Vandenberg area, which would have been just 3 miles offshore, because no new energy could have been built inside the marine sanctuary. Other tribes wanted it there. So it's not a monolithic statement, I can't say, but for us, we would like to see the end of offshore oil drilling completely. We'd like to see the Sable pipeline, shut down. We'd like to see if we can work with offshore wind and how that would look. And I will say that we did compromise to work with offshore wind. We would not have had a sanctuary had we not reached a compromise, because it was a priority in the Biden administration. And I feel firmly that the biggest threat to the ocean and to the whales is climate change. So however we address that, whether it's green renewable energy, we need to address climate change. And so whales are not being killed by offshore wind right now off of our coast, just in case anyone read that. There is no offshore wind. Whales are being killed by climate change. They're starving. They're being killed by other things. So we need to, and all the young people in this room, unfortunately, it's a problem I hope you can all solve, because it's going to be the thing that drives how we live here on the coast.
One small comment about that from our side as well, because as we're talking about the offshore wind, that's a whole new ecosystem potentially that has never really existed before. Floating rocks, because these things would be built offshore, floating out of cement. Kind of like those floating rocks in, Pandora, the planet. What would that do to that ecosystem? How would that change it? And so we've taken some of our boat trips and run them offshore in order to do an environmental DNA sampling from the offshore areas to see, is this a potential way of monitoring what those might do? And so just trying to be proactive with what we might be able to help with.
We unfortunately are out of time, so we'll have to end here. But I want to thank you, Steve and Chairwoman Walker, for such a stimulating conversation. I want to thank all of you for coming out and spending the day with us into the evening. And I'd like to close with some words from the great marine biologist Sylvia Earle. With knowing comes caring, and with caring there is hope that we will find an enduring place for ourselves within the natural, mostly blue systems that sustain us.
I will say,
Yes.
just one thing. I was sitting next to Sylvia Earle on the plane coming back from Canada, and she had this book bag. It was like bigger than her, and she's only 4 feet tall. And so I was carrying these books for her, and she's like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "I'm nominating a new marine sanctuary." Well, because of that trip, we are now a Mission Blue Hope spot too
Oh,
for
wow.
Sylvia Earle. So
Congratulations.
the entire sanctuary is,
amazing.
she's pretty amazing. So Mission Blue Hope spot is an international way to protect marine resources. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Wow, congratulations. As you exit the theater, we're going to play some imagery from the Chumash National Heritage Marine Sanctuary. So enjoy those images. Thank you again, and have a good night.
Thank you all.
And thank you for putting this all together.